The morning sun shone bright through the bedroom window as Sarah Williams slowly opened her eyes. At 7 months pregnant, getting out of bed had become quite a task. She placed her hands on her round belly and smiled softly. The baby was moving around, probably excited for the day ahead just like she was. Today was special. Sarah had her monthly checkup with Dr. Martinez, and she hoped to get good news about the baby's health. Her husband Marcus had been deployed with his military unit for 3 months now, somewhere far away on a mission she couldn't know about. The loneliness was hard, but Sarah was a strong woman. She had learned to be strong when she married a soldier. Sarah got dressed carefully, choosing a comfortable blue dress that fit well over her growing belly. She looked at herself in the mirror and touched her stomach gently. "Today we find out how you're doing in there, little one," she whispered to her unborn child. The drive to the doctor's office was peaceful. Sarah loved these quiet moments in the car, listening to soft music and thinking about her future with Marcus and their baby. She imagined Marcus holding their child for the first time, his strong hands so gentle with something so small and precious. At the medical center, Sarah checked in with the friendly receptionist, Mrs. Chen, who always remembered her name, and asked about Marcus. "How is your husband doing, dear?" Mrs. Chen asked with a warm smile. "He's doing well, keeping busy with his work," Sarah replied, not able to share details about Marcus's military missions. "He sends his love and can't wait to hear about today's appointment." The waiting room was filled with other pregnant women at different stages. Some looked tired, others excited, and a few nervous like Sarah felt. She picked up a parenting magazine and tried to read, but her mind kept wondering what the doctor would say today. "Sarah Williams?" called Nurse Rodriguez from the doorway. Sarah stood up slowly, her hand automatically going to support her back. These days, every movement required extra thought and care. In the examination room, Dr. Martinez greeted Sarah with her usual warm smile. Dr. Martinez was a kind woman in her 50s who had delivered hundreds of babies. She made Sarah feel safe and comfortable during this pregnancy journey. "How are you feeling, Sarah?" Dr. Martinez asked as she helped Sarah onto the examination table. "Pretty good, actually," Sarah answered honestly. "A little tired and my back hurts sometimes, but overall I feel strong." Dr. Martinez began the routine checkup. She measured Sarah's belly, checked her blood pressure, and listened to the baby's heartbeat. The sound of the tiny heart beating fast and strong filled the quiet room. Sarah's eyes filled with happy tears every time she heard it. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Martinez announced with a big smile. "Your baby is growing exactly as expected. The heartbeat is strong and steady. Your blood pressure is good and you're gaining the right amount of weight." Sarah felt a wave of relief and joy wash over her. "Really? Everything is okay?" "Everything is wonderful," the doctor confirmed. "You're doing an excellent job taking care of yourself and this baby. Keep doing what you're doing, eating well, getting rest, and staying active with your daily walks." Dr. Martinez printed out ultrasound pictures for Sarah to keep. Looking at the images of her baby, Sarah felt overwhelming love and excitement. She couldn't wait to show these pictures to Marcus during their next phone call. "When will Marcus be able to call next?" Dr. Martinez asked. She had gotten to know their situation over the months of appointments. "Hopefully in a few days," Sarah replied. "His schedule is unpredictable, but he always finds a way to check on us when he can." After scheduling her next appointment, Sarah left the medical center feeling happier than she had in weeks. She walked slowly to her car, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding the precious ultrasound pictures. The afternoon was beautiful. The sky was clear blue with just a few white clouds, and there was a gentle breeze that felt good on Sarah's skin. She decided to take the scenic route home, driving through the downtown area where she and Marcus used to walk on weekends before his deployment. As she drove, Sarah's mind wandered to happy thoughts. She imagined Marcus coming home and seeing how much the baby had grown. She pictured decorating the nursery together and choosing the perfect name for their child. These dreams kept her going during the lonely months while Marcus was away. About halfway home, Sarah noticed her gas gauge was nearly empty. She had been so focused on getting to her appointment that she hadn't paid attention to how low it was. getting. She spotted a familiar gas station ahead, one she had used many times before without any problems. The gas station was busier than usual for a weekday afternoon. Several cars were at the pumps, and people were coming and going from the convenience store. Sarah found an open pump and carefully pulled her car up to it. Getting out of the car took a moment. At 7 months pregnant, every movement required extra time and care. Sarah took her time, making sure she felt steady on her feet before walking around to the gas pump. The sun felt warm on her face as she unscrewed her gas cap and inserted her credit card into the pump. She was thinking about what to make for dinner and whether she had enough energy to do some light cleaning when she got home. What Sarah didn't know was that just 3 blocks away, something was happening that would change her perfect day into a nightmare. Police officers Jake Morrison and Rick Chen were responding to a call about a hit-and-run accident. Someone had reported seeing a dark-colored sedan with a woman driver leaving the scene of a minor collision. The description was very general: dark car, woman driver. In a busy city, this description could fit hundreds of cars and drivers. But officers Morrison and Chen were new to the force and eager to make an arrest that would look good on their records. As Sarah stood pumping gas, completely unaware of any danger, she was simply a pregnant woman having a good day. She was thinking about her healthy baby, missing her husband, and looking forward to going home to rest. She had no idea that in just a few minutes, her peaceful afternoon would turn into the most frightening experience of her life. She had no way of knowing that 2 police officers were about to mistake her for someone else and treat her in a way that would shock everyone who witnessed it. The gas pump clicked off, indicating her tank was full. Sarah smiled and started to put the nozzle back in its holder, still thinking happy thoughts about her doctor's appointment and her growing baby. That's when she heard the sirens. The sound of sirens grew louder and louder. Sarah looked up from the gas pump, confused and a little worried. 2 police cars were driving fast toward the gas station with their red and blue lights flashing bright against the afternoon sun. Sarah's heart started beating faster. She wondered if there had been an accident nearby or if someone was in trouble. She had always been the type of person who worried about others, and seeing emergency vehicles always made her nervous. The police cars pulled into the gas station parking lot and stopped suddenly. The sirens went quiet, but the flashing lights kept going. Sarah watched as 2 police officers got out of their cars quickly, looking around the area like they were searching for something or someone. Officer Jake Morrison was 26 years old and had been a police officer for only 2 years. He was tall and thin, with short brown hair and serious eyes. His partner, Officer Rick Chen, was a little older at 29, but he had only been on the police force for 3 years. Both men were still learning their job and sometimes made decisions too quickly. Morrison spotted Sarah's dark blue sedan and immediately pointed it out to his partner. "That's it," he said in a low voice. "Dark sedan, woman driver, just like the call described." Chen nodded and reached for his radio. "This is Unit 12. We have a possible suspect vehicle at the Sunoco station on 5th Street. Moving in to investigate." Sarah heard the radio chatter but didn't understand what it meant. She was still holding the gas nozzle, finishing filling up her tank. She felt the baby kick inside her belly, as if the little one could sense that something was wrong. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle immediately," Officer Morrison shouted across the parking lot. His voice was loud and commanding, the kind of voice that made everyone at the gas station turn and look. Sarah looked around, thinking the officer must be talking to someone else. She was just getting gas like she had done hundreds of times before. There was no reason for police to be talking to her. "Ma'am, you in the blue dress, step away from the car now," Morrison shouted again, this time walking toward her with quick, heavy steps. Sarah's confusion turned to fear. The officer was definitely talking to her, but she had no idea why. She carefully put the gas nozzle back in its holder and turned to face the approaching officers. Her hand automatically went to her pregnant belly, a protective gesture she had developed over the months. "Officers, I think there might be some mistake," Sarah said in a calm but shaky voice. "I'm just getting gas, I haven't done anything wrong." But Officer Morrison wasn't listening to her words. In his mind, he had already decided that Sarah was the person they were looking for. The description matched, dark car, woman driver. That was enough evidence for him. "Turn around and put your hands on the vehicle," Morrison ordered as he got closer. His hand was resting on his gun belt, ready to grab his weapon if needed. Sarah's eyes grew wide with fear. "Please, officer, I'm 7 months pregnant. Can you please tell me what this is about? I really don't understand what's happening." Other people at the gas station were starting to notice the commotion. An elderly man filling up his truck stopped what he was doing and watched with concern. A woman with 2 small children quickly moved them away from the scene, sensing that something bad might happen. Officer Chen joined his partner, approaching Sarah from the other side. Now she was trapped between 2 police officers who seemed to think she was some kind of criminal. The fear in her chest was growing stronger, and she could feel her heart beating so fast it made her dizzy. "We received a report that this vehicle was involved in a hit-and-run accident about 20 minutes ago," Chen explained, but his tone was cold and suspicious. "You need to cooperate with us." "A hit-and-run?" Sarah's voice got higher with surprise and fear. "Officers, I've been at my doctor's appointment all afternoon. I have papers in my purse that prove it. There must be some mistake." Sarah slowly reached toward her purse, which was sitting on the passenger seat of her car. She wanted to show them her appointment card and the ultrasound pictures from Dr. Martinez. Surely once they saw the proof, they would realize they had the wrong person. But when Sarah reached for her purse, Officer Morrison panicked. He was young, nervous, and not well trained in handling situations like this. In his inexperienced mind, Sarah reaching for something meant she might be going for a weapon. "She's reaching for something," Morrison yelled to his partner. Gun! No!" Sarah cried out. "It's just my appointment papers. I'm trying to show you proof." But it was too late. Officer Morrison grabbed Sarah's arm roughly and spun her around toward her car. Sarah stumbled because of her pregnancy and the sudden movement. Her belly was large and heavy, making it hard for her to keep her balance. "Stop resisting," Morrison shouted, even though Sarah wasn't fighting back at all. She was just trying not to fall down. "I'm not resisting." Sarah pleaded, "I'm pregnant, please be careful." Officer Chen moved in to help his partner, and together they tried to force Sarah's hands behind her back. But Sarah's pregnant body made it difficult for her to move the way they wanted. Her belly was in the way, and she was scared for her baby's safety. "Please don't hurt my baby," Sarah begged, tears starting to run down her face. "I'll do whatever you want, just please don't hurt my baby." But the officers weren't listening to her pleas. Morrison was convinced that Sarah was resisting arrest, and Chen was following his partner's lead. They both grabbed onto Sarah and tried to force her to the ground. What happened next would be recorded on the gas station's security cameras and on the cell phones of several witnesses. Officer Morrison pushed Sarah hard, and she lost her balance completely. Her pregnant body couldn't handle the rough treatment, and she fell toward the concrete. Sarah tried to catch herself as she fell, but with her hands being held by the officers, she couldn't protect herself properly. She hit the ground hard, landing on her side with a loud, painful thud that made everyone watching gasp in horror. The sound Sarah made when she hit the concrete was something the witnesses would never forget. It was a cry of pain, shock, and terror all mixed together. She immediately curled up into a ball, trying to protect her unborn baby from any more harm. "My baby," she whispered through her tears. "Please, somebody help my baby." Several people at the gas station started shouting at the officers to stop. An elderly woman began recording everything on her phone, while a man yelled, "She's pregnant. What's wrong with you?" But Officers Morrison and Chen weren't finished. They pulled Sarah's hands behind her back and put handcuffs on her while she lay crying on the hard concrete. They ignored her tears, her pleas, and the growing crowd of angry witnesses. Sarah felt pain shooting through her body and was terrified that something might be wrong with her baby. All she could think about was Marcus and how much she wished he was there to protect her and their child from this nightmare that made no sense at all. Sarah sat in the back of the police car, her hands still cuffed behind her back. Every bump in the road made her wince with pain. Her side hurt from where she had hit the concrete, and she was scared that something might be wrong with her baby. The little one had stopped moving as much as usual, which made Sarah even more worried. The drive to the police station felt like it took forever. Sarah kept asking the officers to take her to a hospital to check on her baby, but they ignored her requests. Officer Morrison was driving and Officer Chen sat in the passenger seat. Neither man looked back at Sarah or seemed to care about her condition. "Please," Sarah said one more time, her voice weak and shaky. "I think something might be wrong with my baby. Can we please stop at a hospital?" "You should have thought about that before you ran from an accident," Morrison replied coldly, not even turning around to look at her. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to stay calm. She knew getting upset wouldn't help her or the baby. She said a quiet prayer that everything would be okay and that somehow this terrible mistake would be fixed soon. At the police station, Sarah was taken inside through a side entrance. The building was old and smelled like coffee and cleaning supplies. The fluorescent lights were too bright and made everything look harsh and unfriendly. Officer Chen led Sarah to a desk where a woman in uniform was sitting. The nameplate on the desk read, Sergeant Patricia Lopez. Sergeant Lopez was a Hispanic woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had been working at the police station for 15 years and had seen many things, but something about this situation didn't feel right to her. "What do we have here?" Sergeant Lopez asked, looking up from her paperwork. "Hit-and-run suspect," Chen answered. "Vehicle matched the description and she was acting suspicious when we tried to question her." Sergeant Lopez looked at Sarah carefully. She saw a well-dressed pregnant woman who was clearly in pain and very scared. Sarah's dress was dirty from being thrown on the ground and there were tears in her eyes. This didn't look like a typical criminal to Lopez. "How far along are you, honey?" Lopez asked Sarah gently. 7 months, Sarah replied, grateful that finally someone was speaking to her with kindness. "I'm having some pain since they threw me down at the gas station. Please, I really need to see a doctor. I'm worried about my baby." Sergeant Lopez had 3 children of her own and understood how scary it must be for Sarah to worry about her unborn child. She also noticed that Sarah spoke clearly and politely, not like someone who was guilty of a crime. "Let me get some information from you first," Lopez said. "Then we'll see about getting you checked out. What's your full name?" "Sarah Elizabeth Williams," Sarah answered. "I live at 425 Oak Street. My husband is Marcus Williams. He's in the military, deployed overseas right now." Lopez wrote down the information, but she was already starting to suspect that Morrison and Chen had made a big mistake. Everything about Sarah seemed wrong for someone who would commit a hit and run and then resist arrest. "Tell me what happened today," Lopez said. "Start from the beginning." Sarah took a deep breath and told her story. She explained about her doctor's appointment, how happy she was about the good news, and how she had stopped for gas on her way home. She described how confused she was when the police arrived and how she tried to show them proof of where she had been. "I have my appointment card in my purse," Sarah said, "and ultrasound pictures from today. Dr. Martinez can tell you exactly what time I was there. I couldn't have been in any accident." Sergeant Lopez was becoming more and more convinced that a serious mistake had been made. She had dealt with many real criminals over the years, and Sarah didn't act like any of them. Real criminals usually made up complicated stories or got angry and defensive. Sarah was just telling a simple, believable story and asking for help. "Let me make some phone calls," Lopez told Sarah. "But first, you have the right to make one. Phone call yourself. Do you want to call someone?" Sarah's heart sank. Marcus was on a secret mission somewhere far away. She had an emergency contact number, but it went through military channels that could take hours or even days to reach him. Still, she had to try. "I need to call my husband's emergency contact," Sarah said. "But he's deployed with the military, so it might take a while for the message to reach him." Lopez handed Sarah the phone and helped her dial the number since her hands were still cuffed. Sarah left an urgent message explaining what had happened and asking for Marcus to be contacted as soon as possible. While Sarah was making her call, Sergeant Lopez decided to do some investigating of her own. She called the doctor's office that Sarah had mentioned. The phone rang several times before a receptionist answered. "Dr. Martinez's office, this is Maria speaking." "This is Sergeant Lopez with the city police. I need to verify that a patient named Sarah Williams had an appointment with you today." "Oh yes, Mrs. Williams," Maria replied immediately. She was here from 2 to 3:30 this afternoon for her regular pregnancy checkup. Dr. Martinez said everything looked perfect with the baby. "Is everything okay?" Mrs. Williams seemed so happy when she left. Sergeant Lopez felt her stomach drop. According to the incident report, the hit-and-run accident had happened at 3:15 p.m. on the other side of town. There was no way Sarah could have been in both places at the same time. "Thank you for the information," Lopez said, and hung up the phone. Next, she called the gas station where Sarah had been arrested and asked to speak to the manager. "This is Sergeant Lopez with the police. We had an incident at your station today and I need to review your security footage." "Sure, no problem," the manager said. "I can email you the footage from this afternoon. What time period do you need?" "Between 3:30 and 4 p.m., Lopez replied. While she waited for the security footage, Lopez went to find Officers Morrison and Chen. She found them in the break room, drinking coffee and filling out paperwork about Sarah's arrest. "Morris and Chen, I need to talk to you both right now," Lopez said in a serious tone. The two officers followed her back to her desk, where Sarah was still sitting, still handcuffed, still in pain. "Tell me exactly what happened at the gas station," Lopez demanded. Morrison started explaining their version of events, but Lopez interrupted him when the security footage arrived in her email. She opened the video file, and all three officers watched what had really happened. The video clearly showed Sarah doing nothing wrong. It showed her reaching slowly and carefully into her purse, obviously trying to get something to show the officers. It showed her being cooperative and non-threatening. Most importantly, it showed two police officers using unnecessary force against a pregnant woman who was trying to help them understand they had made a mistake. "Oh no," Chen whispered as he watched himself and his partner throw Sarah to the ground. "Oh, no is right," Lopez said angrily. "You two just assaulted an innocent pregnant woman. She has a perfect alibi for the time of the accident, and this video shows she wasn't resisting anything. She was trying to show you proof of her innocence." Morrison tried to defend their actions. "She matched the description, and when she reached into her purse." "She was reaching for her doctor's appointment card," Lopez interrupted. "The same appointment card that proves she couldn't have been involved in any hit and run." Sarah listened to this conversation with a mixture of relief and continued fear. Relief that someone finally believed her, but fear about what would happen next and whether her baby was okay. "Can I please go to the hospital now?" Sarah asked quietly. "I really need someone to check on my baby." Sergeant Lopez looked at Sarah with sympathy and anger at her fellow officers. "Yes, honey. We're getting you to a hospital right now, and we're going to make sure this mess gets fixed." But none of them knew that Sarah's emergency message had already reached someone important in the military. Someone who recognized the name Marcus Williams and knew that this was not just any soldier's wife who had been hurt. This was the wife of one of America's most elite warriors, and that news was about to change everything. 3,000 miles away, in a secure military compound somewhere in the Middle East, Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison was working late in his office. The compound was quiet, except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of generators running. Harrison was a 45-year-old career military officer with gray hair and serious eyes. He had been in the Army for 22 years and had seen many difficult situations. Harrison was reviewing routine communications when an urgent message appeared on his computer screen. The red priority flag immediately caught his attention. He clicked on the message and read it carefully. His face grew dark as he read the words. "Emergency message for Sergeant Marcus Williams, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Wife Sarah Williams arrested and injured. 7 months pregnant. Requesting immediate contact. Wife in police custody asking for medical attention." Harrison knew Marcus Williams well. Marcus was one of his best soldiers, a decorated Delta Force operator who had served multiple tours and saved American lives in dangerous missions. Marcus was currently leading a critical operation that couldn't be stopped except for the most serious emergencies. But this was exactly the kind of emergency that required immediate action. Harrison picked up his secure phone and called Major David Rodriguez, who was commanding the mission that Marcus was on. "Rodriguez here," came the voice through the encrypted connection. David, this is Harrison. I need you to pull Marcus Williams out of the field immediately. There's a family emergency that requires his attention. How serious? Rodriguez asked. He knew that interrupting an active mission was never done unless something terrible had happened. His pregnant wife has been arrested and injured by police. She's asking for medical help. This is priority 1, David. Understood. I'll get Marcus out of there within the hour, Rodriguez replied. Marcus Williams was checking equipment in a dusty building when his commanding officer approached him. Marcus was 32 years old, tall and strong with dark skin and intelligent eyes. He had been in Delta Force for 8 years and was known for staying calm under pressure. Williams, you need to come with me right now, Major Rodriguez said. Quietly, Marcus looked up, immediately sensing that something was wrong. What's happening, sir? Family emergency. We'll brief you on the way to communications. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Family emergency could only mean something had happened to Sarah or the baby. He followed Rodriguez quickly through the compound, his mind racing with worry. In the communications center, Marcus read the emergency message 3 times, each time feeling more angry and confused. Sarah arrested? Injured? It made no sense. Sarah was the most careful, law-abiding person he knew. She followed every rule and never got into trouble with anyone. I need to call that police station right now, Marcus said, his voice controlled but dangerous. You have secure line access for as long as you need, Rodriguez told him. And Marcus, we're getting you on a plane home within 2 hours. Marcus dialed the police station number with shaking hands. When someone answered, he spoke in the clear, commanding voice he used when dealing with serious situations. This is Sergeant Marcus Williams, United States Army Special Forces. I understand my wife Sarah Williams is being held there. I need to speak to whoever is in charge immediately. The desk sergeant who answered the phone was not Sergeant Lopez. This was Officer Danny Murphy, a lazy cop who didn't like dealing with difficult situations. Your wife was arrested for hit and run and resisting arrest, Murphy said in a bored voice. She'll see a judge tomorrow morning. Resisting arrest? Marcus's voice became very quiet, which anyone who knew him would recognize as a dangerous sign. My wife is 7 months pregnant. Explain to me exactly how she resisted arrest and how she became injured. Look, buddy, I can't give you details about an ongoing case. Call back tomorrow after she sees the judge. That's when Marcus decided to use information that he rarely shared with civilian authorities. Officer, let me be very clear about who you're talking to. This is Sergeant Marcus Williams, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. That's Delta Force. My wife is a military dependent, and I need to speak to your watch commander immediately about her condition and treatment. The mention of Delta Force made Officer Murphy sit up straight. Everyone in law enforcement knew about Delta Force. These weren't regular soldiers. These were the most elite warriors in the American military, the ones who handled the most dangerous and important missions. Let me get the watch commander for you right away, Sergeant Williams, Murphy said, suddenly much more respectful. Watch Commander Captain Robert Hayes was a 20-year veteran of the police force. He was a smart, experienced officer who understood that when Delta Force called about a family member, it was time to pay very careful attention. Sergeant Williams, this is Captain Hayes. I'm looking into your wife's situation right now. Captain, I need to know 3 things immediately, Marcus said in his military briefing voice. First, what is my wife's medical condition? Second, what exactly are the charges against her? And third, what evidence do you have that she committed any crime? Captain Hayes was already pulling up Sarah's file on his computer. What he saw made him very uncomfortable. A pregnant woman arrested for hit and run, but with an alibi that proved she couldn't have been involved. Security footage showing excessive force used against her. And now he was dealing with her husband, who was clearly not just any soldier. Sergeant Williams, I'm going to be completely honest with you, Hayes said. It appears that a serious mistake has been made. Your wife has a solid alibi for the time of the alleged incident, and our review of the arrest shows that inappropriate force may have been used. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Hayes could almost feel the controlled anger through the phone line. Captain, let me make sure I understand this correctly, Marcus said very slowly. Your officers used force against my pregnant wife, who was innocent of any crime, and she is now injured and asking for medical attention. That appears to be the situation. Yes, sir. Where is my wife right now? She's being transported to City General Hospital for medical evaluation. She'll be under guard, but she's getting the medical attention she requested. Marcus felt some relief knowing that Sarah was finally getting medical help, but his anger was far from over. Captain, I'm going to be very clear about what happens. Next, I'm on a plane home within 2 hours. When I arrive, I expect my wife to be released. I expect a full investigation into what happened, and I expect the officers involved to be held accountable for their actions. Sergeant Williams, I completely understand your position. We are already conducting a full review of the incident. Captain, I don't think you understand who you're dealing with here, Marcus said quietly. I'm not just any soldier calling about his wife. I'm a Delta Force operator with congressional commendations, and my wife was assaulted by your officers while she was pregnant with my child. This is going to become a very big problem for your department unless it's handled correctly and immediately. Hayes felt sweat forming on his forehead. He was beginning to realize that this wasn't just a case of mistaken identity anymore. This was a potential disaster involving one of America's most elite soldiers and his family. I understand completely, Sergeant Williams. We're taking this very seriously. You'd better be, Marcus replied. Because when I get there, I'm going to want answers, and I'm going to want justice for what was done to my wife and unborn child. After Marcus hung up, Captain Hayes sat in his office for a moment, thinking about how badly this situation could go for everyone involved. Then he picked up his phone and called the mayor's office. This was about to become much bigger than just a police matter. Meanwhile, Marcus was already packing his gear and preparing for the longest flight of his life. His wife and baby needed him, and nothing was going to stop him from getting home to protect his family. At City General Hospital, Dr. Amanda Foster was finishing her examination of Sarah Williams. Dr. Foster was a specialist in high-risk pregnancies and had been called in specifically to check on Sarah and her baby. The news was both good and concerning. The baby's heartbeat is strong, and there don't appear to be any immediate dangers, Dr. Foster told Sarah gently. But you have bruising on your ribs and back from the fall, and I'm concerned about stress on your body. You need complete bed rest for at least a week, and we need to monitor you closely. Sarah lay in the hospital bed, finally feeling safe for the first time since the nightmare began. The pain medication had helped with her physical discomfort, but she was still worried about long-term effects on her baby. Will my baby be okay? Sarah asked, touching her belly protectively. Babies are tougher than we think, Dr. Foster said, with a reassuring smile. But what happened to you was serious, and we're going to watch you very carefully to make sure everything stays normal. Sergeant Lopez sat in a chair next to Sarah's bed. She had stayed with Sarah throughout the hospital visit, partly as a guard but mostly because she felt responsible for what had happened. Lopez had 3 daughters of her own and couldn't imagine them going through what Sarah had experienced. Mrs. Williams, I want you to know that this is not how our police department normally handles situations, Lopez said quietly. What happened to you was wrong, and we're going to make sure it gets fixed. Sarah appreciated Lopez's kindness, but she was mostly thinking about Marcus. She wondered if her emergency message had reached him and if he was on his way home. She needed him more than she had ever needed anyone in her life. 18 hours later, Marcus Williams walked through the doors of City General Hospital still wearing his military combat uniform. He had flown halfway around the world without stopping. His mind focused on only one thing: getting to his wife and making sure she and their baby were safe. The hospital staff recognized immediately that this was not an ordinary visitor. Marcus was 6 feet tall, with the strong build of someone who trained every day for the most dangerous missions in the world. His uniform had patches and medals that most people had never seen before. But what struck everyone most was the look in his eyes. Controlled anger mixed with deep concern for his family. I'm looking for Sarah Williams, Marcus told the nurse at the front desk. I'm her husband. Room 314, the nurse said quietly. The elevator is down the hall. Marcus walked quickly but quietly through the hospital corridors. When he reached Sarah's room, he stopped at the door and took a deep breath. He needed to be strong for Sarah, even though inside he was furious about what had been done to her. Sarah was lying in bed, awake but tired. when she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. She knew those footsteps better than any sound in the world. "Marcus," she called softly. Marcus appeared in the doorway and Sarah burst into tears of relief. He crossed the room in 3 quick steps and carefully took her in his arms, being gentle because of her condition and injuries. "I'm here now," Marcus whispered, holding her close. "I'm here, and nothing like this is ever going to happen to you again." For several minutes, they just held each other without speaking. Sarah cried all the tears she had been holding back since the arrest, and Marcus felt his anger growing as he saw the bruises on his wife's arms and the fear that was still in her eyes. "How's the baby?" Marcus asked, placing his hand gently on Sarah's belly. "Dr. Foster says the baby should be okay, but I need to rest and be monitored," Sarah replied. "Marcus, I was so scared. I thought I might lose our baby. I thought I might never see you again." Marcus had faced enemy soldiers, dangerous missions, and life-threatening situations, but seeing his wife hurt and scared was harder than any combat he had ever experienced. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said gently. Sarah told him the whole story, from her happy doctor's appointment to the terrifying arrest to being thrown on the ground while pregnant. Marcus listened without interrupting, but his jaw got tighter with every detail. When Sarah finished her story, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he kissed her forehead and said, "I'm going to go talk to some people. I'll be back soon." Marcus found Captain Hayes in the hospital waiting area, along with Sergeant Lopez and 2 men in expensive suits who introduced themselves as lawyers from the city attorney's office. "Sergeant Williams," Captain Hayes said, standing up respectfully. "First, let me say how sorry we are about what happened to your wife. This should never have occurred." Marcus looked at each person in the group with the same intense stare he used when briefing soldiers before dangerous missions. "Captain, my wife was assaulted by your officers while she was 7 months pregnant. She was innocent of any crime, she was cooperative, and she's now injured and traumatized. What are you going to do about it?" One of the city lawyers, a nervous man named Richard Klein, stepped forward. "Sergeant Williams, the city is prepared to offer a settlement that would compensate your family for this unfortunate incident." Marcus turned his stare to the lawyer, and Klein actually took a step backward. "Mr. Klein, I'm not interested in your money. I'm interested in justice and making sure this never happens to anyone else." Captain Hayes cleared his throat. "Sergeant Williams, Officers Morrison and Chen have been suspended pending a full investigation. We're also reviewing our training procedures and use of force policies." "That's not enough," Marcus said firmly. "Here's what's going to happen. First, those officers are going to be charged criminally for assault. Second, your department is going to implement new training on how to treat pregnant women and how to verify information before using force. Third, my wife and I are going to work with you to create educational programs so other officers learn from this mistake." Sergeant Lopez spoke up. "Sergeant Williams, I think that's exactly what should happen. I've been a cop for 15 years, and what I saw on that security footage was wrong." Over the next several weeks, Marcus worked with the police department, the city government, and community organizations to turn the terrible incident into something positive. The security footage from the gas station became a training video used in police academies across the country, showing officers how not to handle situations involving civilians. Officers Morrison and Chen were both disciplined and required to complete extensive additional training in de-escalation, cultural sensitivity, and proper treatment of pregnant suspects. Both men later said that the incident taught them more about proper policing than anything else in their careers. Marcus also worked with military family support groups to create better communication systems so that deployed soldiers could be reached more quickly in family emergencies. Sarah recovered fully from her injuries, and 3 months later she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Justice Marcus Williams. Justice because of what they had fought for, and Marcus after his father who had made sure the right thing was done. The story of what happened at the gas station spread throughout the military and law enforcement communities. It became a powerful reminder that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, situation, or circumstances. Years later, Sarah became an advocate for police accountability and pregnant women's rights. She spoke at community meetings and helped other families who faced similar situations. Marcus continued his military service but also worked to build better relationships between military families and local law enforcement. The incident that began as a terrible mistake became a story of how people can turn pain into purpose, how justice can come from injustice, and how the strongest response to hatred is not revenge, but the determination to make the world better for everyone.